so excited to share that through Executive Endurance Coaching, I've officially joined Never Second's Coach and Nutritionist program. Never Second is a science-driven performance nutrition brand built specifically for endurance athletes. I've personally been using their fueling system for years in my own training, and I love how simple, precise their approach to carbohydrate fueling is for runners, cyclists, triathletes, you name it. And today, if you want to try Never Second for yourself, our listeners can get 15% off by using the code GRIT15 at checkout. GRIT 15 at checkout. Just head to never2.com and start fueling your training with intention. This episode is brought to you by Koya Performance for Life. Koya combines wearable technology with behavioral science to help you unlock more energy and perform at the highest level. Their coaches have worked with Olympians, Super Bowl MVPs, World Series champions, and other elite performers. Their 12-week program focuses on sleep, exercise, nutrition, mindset, and recovery, blending biometric data from wearables like Oura, Whoop, or Garmin with one-on-one coaching from a team that includes a dietitian, sleep coach, movement specialist, and mental performance coach. I'll personally be participating in their March cohort and will be sharing updates with you along the way so you can hear exactly what the experience is like. Grit Files listeners today receive 33% off the program using the code AGRANDOFF. Visit koya.life to learn more. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Grit Files. I'm your host, Laura Reynolds, and today I am meeting with Stephen Speck, who is the founder and CEO of MantiSpeck, LLC. It's a personal and professional enhancement firm, coaching.
Well done.
And prior to MantiSpeck, I have to read it because there's so many accolades to go along with him, but prior to MantiSpeck was an educator for roughly a quarter of a century, occupying the roles of classroom teacher, interscholastic athletic coach, school-based administrator, and athletic director. He also spent 4 years overseeing people in corporate, and perhaps most importantly, or perhaps most excitingly, he was a cage fighter.
Yeah.
So we're going to talk about all of it today. Stephen Speck, welcome to the Grit Files.
First of all, my dear friend, I am grateful beyond measure to be here, honored, to say the least. Let's not conjure too lofty of expectations. We will touch upon all roles previously occupied by yours truly, but tongue in cheek.
Yeah. So before we dive into your story of grit, I'm going to take you back a little bit. You may or may not remember when we first met.
Is this a test?
This would have been almost 3 years ago. I lose track of time now. Maybe closer to 3. But Stephen and I actually crossed paths in our corporate world.
Yes.
I was working for a search firm, and Stephen was working for one of our strategic partners. And every once in a while we held kind of these networking events, and we were holding one in our office. It was just interesting because what he couldn't have known during that time, or what you couldn't have known during that time, was that I was actually I was very unhappy in the role that I was in. I was struggling with faith at the time. And I was just kind of like floating in what I wanted to do next in life. And when Stephen came up to me, it was kind of like it was a funny moment because I didn't really know how to absorb it at the time. It took me off guard, but he came up to me and he was like, hey, he said, I'm a faith-based guy, and something about you just felt like magnetic, and I felt like there's somewhere along the line that we should be working together. And I think we should probably grab dinner, not in a flirting way, but like grab dinner to talk about kind of how we could partner together, because there's something different. I like your energy, and I can sense that you're going to be big. And I was like, huh. And it was one of those moments where, like, sometimes people have faith in you before you have faith in you, and I didn't even realize it in that moment because I had no idea that you and I were actually going to end up on very similar professional paths.
And so was born an authentic friendship.
Yes, and that was like the seed of our coaching journey, and I didn't even know at the time, but we were going to end up on almost identical paths in what we were going to do professionally after this experience. But we met for lunch, and it was one of, like, the most authentic conversations. We talked all of the things.
I would agree.
And I originally, truth be told, I had one of my favorite humans on this planet was looking for a job at the time, and I thought it would make a lot of sense for me to meet you and connect you to him. So I was like, oh, fine, I'll go to lunch and figure it out. Well, it had almost nothing to do with it.
Really? But it was kind of you to take one for the team.
It was. It was. I thought I was doing a favor. But then it ended up being one of the greatest conversations. So that is how we came to be. That's how we came to be.
So I remember that evening vividly. I'm touched to learn all the intricacies beneath the surface of which I was unaware.
Yeah.
And I do believe that with great intention came the foundation of our friendship. And it's interesting that you diagnosed those networking events as you did. I'm not going to profess that as a man, stereotypically, I have the same trepidation or anxieties, but more so than not, knowing that there's a purpose you're aiming to achieve, to meet high caliber individuals, to evoke rapport that might lead to transactional success, which was actually different from the purpose my role for my former firm held. You're still operating in this ambiguous environment where you got to break the ice, and you have to do so in a manner that isn't threatening and comes off sincerely. So I guess I'm not astounded to know that I dumped the faith piece upon you initially, but it's good to hear that even if you were a bit uncertain or cautious, that I wasn't received with ill intent.
Yeah. And I think even after the fact, and you didn't know this at the time, but maybe you're very intuitive, I think, as a person. So maybe you did know this, but I think you went on to later describe me as faith curious.
I did. I remember. Yes.
I really was. There was just so much happening in my life that made me doubt faith that when you said it, I was like, okay, I'll talk to him. Because it was just like a moment that I felt like I needed to explore my life.
Yeah.
And how could you even know that that was something that I was experiencing? So thank you for that.
You're welcome.
And now we've got this wonderful
Here we are.
friendship.
Yes.
So I want to talk about all of the things, but first and foremost, this transition out of corporate into what is now this booming coaching career. There's a ton of people, I feel like, in the world that are like considering going that entrepreneur route. They're maybe really successful in corporate, but it's like a tugging at them where they're like, is this all there is? What was the moment for you in corporate where you're like, yeah, I could do this. It feels very comfortable. I'm making good money. I'm successful in it, but...
Yeah, so this is to give you as condensed and abridged timeline of my occupational history, and you touched upon it. I'm grateful and impressed. After my tenure in education drew to its close, and quite frankly, Laura, I loved what I did. In the last 15 years of my time as an educator, I was an athletic administrator, an athletic director. That was a matter of the discernible difference between fit versus failure. The role no longer fit my life nor that of my family. I was losing time, losing moments, as opposed to being able to maintain balance. And I recognized that I had to make a change. So I made that leap of faith at the end of my tenure in education and joined this CPA full-service consulting firm where I was the manager of our relationship management team, a branch of business development targeting more the cultivating and maintaining of authentic relationships, brand ambassadorship, not as much the transactional component, although I wasn't removed from it. That firm, by origin, had been founded by my first cousin on paper, but my big brother for all intents and purposes, as long as he and I have known to identify as such, and our former CEO. They were the ones who, not to take from other firms of their kind, but innovatively separated themselves by being so hyper-relational in an industry stereotypically that often has a cold and impersonal stigma. A few years into my time with them, to no fault of anyone's, I mean, you found something of that nature for one of three reasons: to pass on generational wealth, to work till the day you die, or ultimately to reap the benefits of the fruits of your labor. And they sold to a much larger corporate entity. And again, not to speak ill of that company, but we went from being a multi-million, by definition, regional firm that had a national presence to being acquired by a billion-dollar national and internationally present firm. And it's not that those folks don't care about relationships, but I recognized, again, in the spirit of fit versus failure, that my ability to be authentically impactful was disintegrating. And I was also reminded very quickly why I occupationally hadn't elected to pursue finance or business way back when. And so that all coincided with right as I was crossing the threshold of 50. And My wife and I, she's the love of my life. She's my favorite person, my best friend. We sat down, we talked about it, we prayed on it. And the end result was her prompting me not only to accept, but to embrace this half century of life, to take it by the wheel, full throttle, and run for a spin to see what we could do with it. And so if there is a positive byproduct to living this long, you take pride confidently, and that's another area where I find an undeniable, discernible difference. Confidence versus arrogance. One is earned, one is stolen. One is self-entitled, typically unwarranted. The other, if you allow yourself to recognize all the knowledge you've acquired and the experience you've amassed, you have that deserved right to be confident in what you've accomplished. And so that positive byproduct is that you have gifts to bestow upon others from which they just might benefit. And so I felt after a long tenure in education, 4 years in corporate relationship management, career in athletics spanning from the rec level all the way to the professional ranks, both as a practitioner and as a coach trainer, my time in athletic administration, I had a lot to share with others. And so my wife was like, let's do it. Now, that was also coupled with the fact that a dear friend of mine, who is also a mentor in his own right to me, he owns his own educational coaching firm. And in the evolution of our friendship, I had come to admire what he was doing. And it was a bit of, if not me, then who? For a while, you start to question, what makes me qualified? Until, again, you allow yourself to feel that deserved confidence. And you say, hey, I guess we felt or thought we were done taking our leaps of faith, but the danger is if there's only nobody else on the other side to catch you when you land, and what's the harm in taking one more? And so MantiSpeck LLC was founded roughly 1 year ago, almost to date, and here we are.
Identical paths.
Yeah.
Because same with my coaching firm as well.
Yes.
Almost a little over a year. So
when you called, the alignment has been uncanny from jump. Mm-hmm. And that was all the more reason why I was as if not more excited than any other to spend the time with you. Like, I recognize per roles, you're host, I'm guest. But selfishly, I want to dig in because we walk side by side, shoulder to shoulder on this journey. And I'm so grateful to share it with a friend like you and to see you thriving, because there's plenty of room in the sandbox, and I'm sure as we'll uncover, while similar, there are differences in those to whom we're catering or those we're targeting to serve. And everybody wants and honestly needs companions in navigating this earthly life.
Yeah. And that's one of the biggest reasons why I have the guests that I do here, because I think there is such a need in feeling like you're not alone in these walks of life, because it's scary enough to go through unknown. It's scary enough to deal with failure. So to sit there in it and think that you're the only one that's ever experienced it.
Say less. Yeah.
So I know we have a lot of synergies in many areas of our lives, but one of the biggest ones that brought us together when we first started having conversations together was sport.
Correct.
My sport was endurance running, triathlons. I spoke about my daughter doing Ninja Warrior, and we connected over that because your kids do Ninja Warrior. Yeah.
My younger son had done it, yes.
And obviously cage fighting for you. But I know, at least for me, as I was, experiencing the sport in one part of my life, I didn't realize it at the time, but so much of that I can attribute to what my business is now.
Yes.
It's really built on some of the fundamentals that I was developing during some of those really hard efforts. I know probably being a cage does the same thing. So having done that part of your career and everything else that you've touched on, like, it's funny to me, but I think it all does kind of come back to that original thing, and
hands
it's being
down
in the cage and fighting. So what did the cage teach you that nothing else had?
Yeah, so I touch upon this. I just released my second manuscript. It's a personal and professional enhancement guide companion called Shaping the Mantis. And we can talk about that if it suits later.
Oh, we don't talk about it.
Fair enough. Shameless plug. So in actuality, I was a combat sports athlete almost from jump. I also was a tennis player, lifelong, and so much of my being steered in that direction of individual sports was thanks to my parents, not deceptively, but without my possessing an awareness at the time, recognizing that I was suffering from a tremendous amount of anxiety, typically manifesting in the form of a fear of disappointing those I loved and about whom I cared, and one of the contexts being teammates. So I started wrestling in elementary school, did so all through college, began boxing when I was in my 20s. And so MMA, mixed martial arts, was a culmination. You ask, what did I profit from that, or how has it culminated to transcend to other aspects of my life? You know, as an athletic administrator interscholastically, we speak of sports being extensions of the classroom. Are they extracurricular? Are they actually co-curricular? In any regard, we're doing so because they are to serve as much, if not more, in certain capacities as preparation for us as competitors in the sport of life.
Yeah.
So through individual athletics, and I would include tennis as well. A lot of folks have characterized it as combat or, boxing at 90 feet. There is a tremendous amount of discipline, resilience. You wallow in your own glory. You revel in your own defeat. The beauty I found in those individual sports was they all operated in a team setting in some capacity as well. So you would train with your brothers and sisters on the court, in the studio, and then when it came to go to war, to go to battle, you were a lone soldier. And I have found so many analogies, I think analogically, in so many contexts in my life, and I have come to find, without question, it's one of my core values, being an empathetic and supportive teammate, and utilizing all those resources that you acquire from those with whom you surround yourself, so that when you are called to action, individually, independently, you're equipped with so much more than that you would bring to the table by yourself.
Right.
And that has been true in all those walks I referenced athletically, and is indeed now how I attack every aspect of my life, doing so in an effort to apply my talents and skills with the best version of myself possible. I believe that the key to cooperative achievement within any organization, group, is by elevating the individual talents and skills of all stakeholders. And a lot of folks on the surface would think that's a paradox, individuals. But no, the team is comprised of individuals, all who possess undeniably unique gifts. So we grab insights, we pull from those respective entities and combine to make as absolutely phenomenal a product as you possibly can.
I mean, I even ran into that in the hiring world. I would have conversations with hiring managers all the time, and you've probably seen it on the other side because you were, hiring talent. But I would have conversations all the time with the leaders, and they would want so bad to control this team dynamic and train everybody to be the same. And I had to really work hard to be like, why aren't we hiring talent that they're all experts in what it is that they do, and you trust them to be the experts that they are so much that they're going to self-govern.
Yeah.
And it's going to be insanely successful because you're giving them free rein to do what it is they already know. Why hire somebody that you think isn't capable of steering the ship? You hire talent that you know is really amazing at what they do, and together you can tackle anything, and that comes back to the team thing.
You're so insightful. I scaffold off in a continuum. Way back in the day, and I may be dating myself, when we first started talking about delegation. That was basically looking at an individual, and I'm oversimplifying, who you entrusted enough and saying, I need to get from point A to point B, and I'd like this done, and I have enough trust in you that you're the person I'm choosing to do it. And then that ascended to empowerment. And that was more of, look, I got to get from here to here, but I do believe you're better at this than I. Please run with it. when I speak of elevating the talents and skills of individuals, that is more of what you just described. That's like, look, here we are. We have a shared end goal somewhere out there. Self-govern, run this thing, because not only do I recognize you're more talented and skilled at this than I couldn't begin to outline the spectrum that we're going to follow to achieve here. You are the one for this. So I agree with you. And that has been the latter lesson that I have learned since the day on which it was recognized by my folks that I was going to struggle from an anxiety-ridden perspective in those team contexts, now to see the benefits, the duality that when shared is the unstoppable force.
Yeah. I want to go back a little bit to the athletic piece that we share, because I think it's funny that not just us, but I think a lot of people that do any sort of endurance sport, like post, high school or collegiate career, it sort of involves like an element of pain. Like a big element of pain. And we joke, at least in the running world, like, are we all masochists? Like, are we doing this intent? Like, is there something in us that just enjoys beating the shit out of ourselves? Like, why? But I feel like there's so much growth that comes in that pain. Was there ever a moment, though, where you're physically fighting and you're in there having these mental battles with yourself? Was there ever a moment where you were like, this is actually beyond me? Like, this might be too much pain for me to take, and maybe I need to address something else that's going on in me, because, like, the physical pain isn't working anymore. Like, it's the distraction isn't there anymore. I have to address something deeper in, like, an identity sense.
So you don't pull punches, pardon the pun. Like, your questions are legit.
We go deep here.
I feel it. So multifaceted. First of all, this is going to blow your mind. I believe that life is all about context. So you referenced the run piece. And when I know the lengths, the distances that you personally have run in which you compete, that makes me more anxious than getting elbowed in the face. There is an aspect, and control is an illusion, but there is an aspect in my mindset that believes I have a greater power to impact the situation when I'm facing an opponent in the cage than when you run like 40 miles, right? 50?
I think my longest was like 40.
Okay, so when I'm 27 miles into this run, I just can't help believe I would be panic stricken. I did one half marathon, and by about mile 8, like Windows was in shutdown mode. I felt like I was failing. So it is surreal, and it's respect immediately granted from me to you when I hear you speak of that, because there are others who would think like, oh, no chance I'm getting in a cage and throwing hands with somebody. Father Time is undefeated. I started my career in MMA in my 30s. I was late to the party.
I was going to say, you were actually later than I remember.
Yeah, so
okay.
the sport.
It's never too late.
Well, yeah, yes. So the sport had evolved. It's obviously a comparatively newer sport to so many. And as I shared, I had spent so much of my years coming up in other branches, other disciplines of MMA, which is what made it so appealing to me, because you can never learn it all. But yes, you'll hear other fighters speak of the fact that anyone who tells you she is not scared when that door closes, when that day arrives, that door closes, is lying. I will tell you there's no amount of preparation, there's no amount of balance among your heart, mind, body, and soul, that when that gripping reality ensues, and mind you, at the pinnacle of my career, I fought in front of nearly 10,000 people. I mean, there was one fight at which Michael Phelps, Ray Lewis, and Torrey Smith were cage side. And I'm in this out-of-body experience, like, you guys are here to see me, right? And let's digress, okay? Call it the elephant in the room. I say this often. We're going to throw a saddle on the elephant and ride it around from it. Yes, I was a professional cage fighter, but I was by no means the upper echelon, which goes hand in hand.
Jake Paul.
Okay, all right. Jake Paul, you gotta admire what he has done to attempt to silence critics. But I'm speaking of, real quick, if you draw the analogy of like the UFC is to Major League Baseball, we know that in baseball there's a minor league system with single, double, and triple A. I started my career in the equivalent of like a single A affiliate. I reached the top of the mountain for me with Shogun Fights, which is a regionally based promotion out of the Baltimore area, and I believe as fine as any you'll find on the East Coast. That would be like a teetering AAA. And one could argue that I might have been in over my head even there, but I was bridging the gap of the learning curve more quickly than maybe others would on account of my recognizing I didn't have as long a shelf life. Yes, there were plenty of moments, and ironically, some of them were without even contact. I can remember vividly being in fights, and not on account of a blow that it had landed or in a grappling exchange, where just so overcome, I don't even know that the word anxiety does it justice, but this overwhelming reality of the context in which you are at that moment, that I am face to face with another man, cage door closed, 10,000 people, all eyes on me, and nowhere to run, nowhere to hide.
Yeah, like stroke out for a second.
Yeah,
oh my God.
That's exactly right.
What have I done?
Like what's
Why
this
am I
look
here?
like on the live feed right now? Because I feel like I'm having a stroke.
Yes.
And is anybody else seeing? So yeah, and in terms of when I knew it was time, it was much like those other contexts where I've referenced fit versus failure. I was 40 years old when I fought my last fight. It ended in an injury. I was hospitalized twice the following week. I was a full-time athletic director. I had 2 children and a wife who, for whatever reason, adores me. And it was this, call it an epiphany, but it was more of a, hey, pal, put down the toys. It's time to walk away from. It just wasn't contextually appropriate for me anymore. And so now, as a branch of my firm, I still have the joy of pouring into and training others, but that is stereotypically one of the hardest points of acceptance for a combat sport athlete, is to know when it's your time, because there's always one more. If I could just find the perfect opponent, I could go out.
Especially if I met, I feel like that's doubly so if you got an injury. Kind of like,
yeah, so
you want to come back. You're
yes.
Like, man, I trained so hard for this, and I don't want to end on an injury. It's kind of tempting to come back.
That injury will spare the viewing audience all the details. It was a low blow. Mm-hmm. It was deemed egregious by the official. There was no warning. He took a point immediately. So that was another conscience.
Replayed that one.
And the fact that it was a point deduction immediately means such that if I had deemed myself unfit to continue medically, I would have won by disqualification. My conscience wouldn't allow me to do it, even though it didn't matter whether I had 5 minutes to recover or 5 hours, I wasn't going to be right. So yes, again, pardon the pun, I have wrestled with that for the past decade since that night. And then I just have to find solace, whether it be through my faith and the idea that there is the belief, great intention behind what occurred, or what I've been able to draw from that and use in fostering growth in others. But yeah, it is so imperative that you recognize when you are being led to realize this time has drawn to its close.
And I mean, that's a big conversation here with a lot of the podcasts, because we are in these transitional phases of life.
Yes.
A lot of us
Yes.
getting closer to that end and acceptance.
You can say it, Laura. You're not there yet, okay?
We're all getting old,
Yeah.
and our bodies are failing us now. But we do talk a lot about the push and pull of mourning what once was and grieving what once was, and then moving into something that could be better aligned for you. And both can be true.
Mm-hmm.
And I think a lot of people feel like they have to pick. Do I have to stay in this moment of sadness?
It's very binary.
I wish I had one more. Or do you completely lean into this new thing and pretend that you're excited that old life was gone?
Yeah.
You can do both. But I want to talk about the hard part of that versus, because obviously things have gone well. You've transitioned to the most alignment.
But it wasn't always
it wasn't.
No.
And out of all of the identities that you've had, because you've been in a number of different titles, a number of different roles, and a number of different lives, What do you think has been the hardest of your identities to shed?
So I'm going to try to give you a concrete answer because I know that's what you'd like to receive, but I'm going to walk you the path. So began as a classroom teacher and shortly thereafter the head coach of 2 high school athletic programs. Reached a point on my own terms where I was ready to impact the educational and interscholastic athletic processes from different perspectives, and that's what prompted me to become an athletic director. Then understood that that was no longer the right fit for my family. There were aspects of the job as an AD that I immediately was grateful to discard. Late nights, 14-hour work days, with 2 sons, both of whom are student athletes. Harder to let go of not having a hand in impacting their interscholastic athletic experiences. Transition to the CPA full-service business consulting firm. Those first few years, after finally shedding the layers of the imposter syndrome, reinvigorating as a professional, finding a new lease on life, coin cliches, lifelong learner. I mean, it was like a professional rebirth. Then to have the corporate acquisition unfold and literally almost no power to impact some of the most profound aspects of that situation or that context, having to relinquish what I loved with almost no word to say.
And that one was like out of your control.
Exactly. And in general, I guess I say this often, the only power we have to impact any situation in this earthly life that we encounter is to apply the best versions of ourselves to those. But as you're suggesting, even doing so, it wasn't going to work.
Right.
In the here and now, running MantiSpeck LLC, the rewards far outweigh the angst, but there are moments where now being the one who bestows the knowledge or shares the experience with others, as you're watching those individuals, those clients flourish, you have glimpses and you remember being in the throes of that yourself and you miss it.
Yeah.
So what I'm learning to do, because this is an early stage of this journey for me, is to find it's not just living vicariously through them, it's just to find a new joy, even beyond the likes of what I felt when I was a high school coach or an AD. Just recognizing how powerful their successes are, their achievements, and from the experiences I hold, knowing what still awaits them.
Yeah.
And just being grateful to be a passenger on those journeys. But the MMA was hard, and that was more the umbrella of just accepting that my days as a competitive athlete were over.
Right.
And there are still like fleeting moments where I'll con myself in.
Let me back in the cage.
Right, and then it could be it's my 17-year-old son or it's my wife, and they're like, no, you're old. Like,
don't embarrass us.
Not gonna. What do you think would happen if I entered that bracket and you'd get crushed? And so then I just come right back down.
Yeah.
But I also do believe that because I was 40 when I hung up my gloves in MMA, I mean, that's comparatively older than a lot of folks. And so maybe that was a bit easier for me than it might have been others, just because I was 10 years from 50 at that moment alone. You realize whether you like it or not, you don't have much more time to do that.
Yeah. And I think we all have our ways of, processing these transitions as they occur. For me, it's turning on 2000s emo pop
right.
and running in the middle of the mountains and screaming into the ethers that are,
yes.
how am I going to get through this?
Uh-huh.
For you, we actually talked about this. You're a big journaler.
Okay.
And I want to talk about, because I think that this is a tool that a lot of listeners can walk away with if they are looking for a way to process these transitional times. You speak about 4 different pillars. I want you to talk about those because you set up your journal and you have little icons for each of those pillars.
Wow, look at you, friend.
So
That's my girl.
Like a coach or something. I don't know.
Okay, yeah, right.
But I really loved that tool, and I thought I could even incorporate that. Journaling is something that I wanted to get more into. I've gotten away from it, for many, many years. But when you talked about the way that you set that up to kind of give yourself a template each
Yeah.
day. I love that. So do you mind sharing what
No,
these 4 pillars are?
I'd be honored. So I talk about it in the book, separate from the 4 core values by which I live my life and the foundation on which my company was built. I believe that if you, upon hitting the pillow at the end of the day, reflect upon every event with which you were involved over the course of that day, they can all be categorized in one of 4 pillars: heart, mind, body, and soul. Your heart, your emotional quotient, okay, how we navigate that roller coaster, the ebbs and flows, the highs and lows. Mind, it's your intellect, okay, that's your rationale, your cognitive function.
Like, what are you doing to grow?
Yep.
That
Body
learn
would
more?
be your physical prowess. Okay. Our body is a temple. What are we doing to preserve, to maintain it? And that includes what I classify as 2 categories, right? So that's your wellness and fitness. Okay. And I break that down. And then finally, your soul. That's the more intangible, and it's derived from your belief system. For me, it's my faith, but it's your moral compass. It's what guides the decisions we make, the actions that we take. So when I reflect upon any given day and I assess all those activities, all those events with which I was involved, as you alluded, and I'm a journaler, but it's funny, I talk about this in the book as well. I never was through my childhood. Like, I didn't have a diary.
Right.
The concept was exciting. No, listen, the concept, okay. It was a very intentional look at the camera.
The truth here on
Okay.
this podcast. You had a diary.
Yeah, I did not. The idea was really cool. Like, I would have loved to have dug into, buying the book, but I could never make myself document. And I believe some of that's on account of the fact that whether it's goal setting, whether it's the idea of journaling, that becomes very intimidating for people because we have trouble.
It makes it real.
Yeah, it's also
and it's real.
It's also getting through the threshold. Like I speak about goal setting in the book, that there are contexts in which complex, multi-tiered goal setting is appropriate, but in others, you get so entangled in setting up the elusive goal that you're so daunted you don't get started in attempting to achieve it. So with this journaling, I was trying to come up with a formula that would be of substance, but not so consuming that you're like, where do I carve out 45 minutes to journal today? So I'm an iOS guy, I'm an Apple guy, late conformist, and the current iOS platform has a journal app. So what I do is every day in that app, I stack 4 emojis: a heart, the brain emoji, the flexing bicep for body, and then I choose the cross, but you could easily choose the compass depending upon what your belief system is for heart, mind, body, and soul. And then beside each, I do nothing more than type the most significant event that I encountered on that day, satisfying each of those pillars. And it's beneficial in the sense that, one, yes, it provides me with an anecdotal reference, the history of my life. I can scroll back and take a look at the greatest hits from any given day. But what's more significant is that it is a tool of accountability for me.
Yeah.
I know very clearly if I look back at the last few days and I recognize that the words that I selected for a given pillar are a bit thin, or it's evident they were a stretch for me to get down, that I'm neglecting that pillar of my life.
The literal visual.
Correct.
It is,
I'm out of balance. Exactly. Yeah. I'm off. And that instability can be only restored by my being more intentional about that pillar than what I've granted it. So, in the case of body, if I've got like rest, which is a necessary component, but it's like a lot of rest, and it's stretch, and it's walk. Again, not knocking any, but comparative to what my normal regimen would be, that's thin, right? Right. Like, and then it's like, well, no wonder I feel a little sluggish right now. If I've been short and my fuse is wearing thin, and my attitude, I should say, is not at its best, I can probably look at that heart pillar and see that my wife and I haven't been on a date in a minute, or I'm not spending much time with my boys and pouring into them.
Yeah.
And so again, it's a reminder, like, where have you been devoting your time and energy elsewhere that has caused for that neglect? And I have been doing that now for, I want to say 2 years, and it's quick, it's easy, it's intentional, and it's effective.
Yeah.
And what it does, coupled with my core values, that balance is a component of my being able to apply that best version of myself that I keep referencing. It's all cooperative in that culmination. So yeah, that's the extent of my journaling, but has become very effective. And like so many components in our lives that once we install and see the benefits of them, I can't imagine my life without it now.
Yeah, and it's a literal data point. I mean, everybody loves data now.
Yes.
It's true data to help you uncover patterns that may have been linked to something that you're doing on a regular basis.
Correct.
Even like going back to a performance standpoint, I'd be curious to see if you have like a Garmin or a Whoop or whatever, like what those numbers would look like.
Absolutely.
Based on what you reflected in your journal. And I would be willing to bet that some of your most high stress days, one of those pillars is lacking.
I know for me, that is undeniably true.
Yeah.
And sometimes the pill is not exactly what you were hoping to swallow in stomach.
Right.
But the truth never lies. So yeah, right?
Yeah.
So I'm like, busted. So yeah, just one of the little nuggets that has also served as an anchor point from which I can serve others more effectively, a tool with which I can equip someone else. That is, that's the irony, right? Like I'm sure you're seeing in your work as a coach, you might have all these tremendous ideas, but when it comes to assisting or supporting another in installing them into that individual's life will create more of a burden. That's counterintuitive.
Yeah.
So you're also trying to find entry points that can support that individual or that group, that organization, which aren't going to break the stride of all the good that's happening. And that's its own balance.
Yeah, that's so true. I love that tool. So for anyone who's looking for a way to navigate this phase in their life, I think that's a good way to start.
I appreciate you.
Want to talk about shaping the mantis, because I actually don't even know the story of the mantis. But what is the mantis for you?
So this is interesting in that it started out far more surface, superficial, and has evolved over the last, 20, 30 years of my life. Mm-hmm. Initially, it began with I can't even profess that it was this profound epiphany, but really taking interest in the creature. I loved how
pretty cool.
It is really cool,
If you
right?
ever watch his little hands, little eyes.
That's what I'm saying, right?
Pretty cool.
So I had this whole mentality that if every creature on Earth were proportionally the same size, that the praying mantis would rule the world because of its self-sufficiency. I'm not a big fan of its carnivorous nature. I don't promote that, okay? And a lot of people really like to cling to the fact that the female is larger than the male. She typically eats him in mating. But we're gonna say that no two entities are identical, all right? So I don't identify with it as a whole. But that then started creating more symmetry in that I saw this independent nature, and it reminded me of how I had gravitated more towards individual sport. And then, I began acquiring my faith more definitively. And the creature received its name because it, by appearance, is residing in prayer all the time, except for when it's called to action, to engage in, if you will, competition in this sport of life, which is a staple component of my book and a lot of the angle from which I operate. There's actually reference to the type of creature it is in the Bible. I ran into a short story by an author called The Great Battle, in which it is outlined how evenly matched it is with the gecko. It's going to sound kind of goofy, but I actually raised geckos, like had little leopard gecko, and that was like symbolic of taming adversity because they were polar opposite enemies of one another. So it just started to evolve. And then when I became a dad, so many of those attributes that I had come to identify as similar to my own from this creature, then I recognized those were ones that I wanted to model for my sons in fatherhood. When you're a combat sports athlete, you typically have like a surname, like a nickname, and I was the praying mantis because so many people would exercise disbelief that I was a fighter because my demeanor outside of the cage, outside of the ring, off the didn't.
Agree with us.
Well, it didn't.
A cage fighter.
Yeah, so it all just gradually grew, and it became, I know the term spirit animal. It just became this entity with which I identified. So when I founded MantiSpeck, my last name Speck, it was sort of a morphing of as many of the roles of existence that I had occupied to be symbolic of what I was looking to offer others in return. Shaping the Mantis is basically a book written, as it describes, to support others in personal and professional enhancement. But the stance from which I write it is I introduce so many of the concepts that I use in my coaching, and they are coupled with anecdotal references to my life, to my children's lives. So there's some vulnerability there, right? Because I'm sharing, walks down memory lane, my past for better or worse, and it's not all flattering, in hopes that in addition to introducing these concepts that serve as the platform through which I coach and train others, when you add those stories of a personal nature, they'll resonate with people and they can identify. Again, I told you, I think in analogies. My hope is even if not identically, people will read and they'll think, they'll remember fondly or hurtfully a time that is similar enough to them. Then they can couple it with the concepts introduced, and it all will assist them in creating and ultimately enhancing these best versions of themselves.
Yeah, I love that.
Thank you.
I'm excited to read it. He didn't bring me a copy today, which is...
Author copies will be delivered tomorrow. We had this conversation prior to filming, but she's airing it out just to embarrass me. So as sweet and loving as this has been thus far, the truth shall be told. So yeah.
You spoke about your kids. That was something that we had connected early on about. I think Emmy is between ages of your boys.
My boys are Compton will turn 17 this month, and Chatham just turned 14.
Okay, so Emmy's quite a bit younger. She's
Yeah. She's a little earlier on the path.
Earlier on, but she's mighty,
I wonder where she gets it. Spitfire.
And I think so much of what drives me, and I'm sure similarly to you, is how she sees the world. Like I want it to be different than what I saw it. I want her to have the ability to think that she's capable of taking up, because she is capable of taking on what feels like impossible. I want her to think that if she's told no, that maybe it's a maybe. It's not really a no.
You sound like my wife,
right? So in all of your walks of life and all of your experience that you've had so far, if you're sitting with your boys in here today, what are like the top things that you want them to go into their next relationships or their next efforts? What are some of the key lessons that you feel are really important, not just to your boys, but like to anybody that's going through this? They're in like a pretty formidable age right now, in the high school, middle school.
Yep.
It's a tough world. So what is it that you think that they need to know in order to survive that phase?
You're absolutely right. Before I dive in, let me tell you, and this is not lip service, your daughter is blessed, fortunate to have you as a mama. My respect for you transcends I just look at you as a high caliber individual. I'm grateful to have my world be one that includes you and surround myself with a friend like you. So she's in good hands. There's no manual. They don't hand them to us. They're not waiting at the hospital, right? Birth certificate, manual. And as you know, the balance of parenthood is drawing from, again, that knowledge you've acquired, experience you've amassed, and enabling your children to benefit from it proactively without living their lives for them. And so the other, we spoke about an elephant in the room earlier. Another is this world in which our children are living is undeniably more challenging than that in which I definitely grew up, and you too. You're younger than I. Social media, the pressures that are perpetuated by the society in which we now live. So I don't envy them at all. Now, I will tell you, people hear, ooh, we got a 14 and almost 17-year-old boy. And I will say, this is not to come off with bias, but our boys make life easy on us. They are fine young men. Our older son he's an incredible person. And we're so grateful that he is our younger son's favorite person. They are best friends. And I would have thought at this point in their lives, 14 and 17, 8th grade, 11th grade, that discrepancies in who they are would have been so great that would not have withstood, but they are the best of friends. So in answer to your question, I try to draw from all. They're both multi-sport athletes, as I mentioned. The motto in our household is hard and fast, fun and free. I'm not going to get on the soapbox too heavy, but I am vehemently opposed to sports specialization for a multitude of reasons, and they know that all the more that we expect from them is loyalty to their belief systems in all that they do, to be one who demonstrates authentic and admirable character, to serve as a empathetic and supportive teammate, and to apply the best version of themselves, their skills and talents in all that they do. If they step onto a respective field of play, if they're cleaning the table that night at dinner, and they align those 4 values, the outcome's insignificant. Because what we know is they put themselves in the best positions possible for success in whatever context in this world. And so in doing so, they've eliminated the potential for regret, the infamous shoulda, coulda, woulda trio. It's only when you abandon one or more of those 4 pillars that regret has the ability to creep in the mix. And then there might be a conversation to be had as to where we fell short. And so I would say that every lesson I attempt to impart on them always returns to that, because most of what beckons me to intervene as a dad is when they start to stray from those values, and as a result, they recognize that what's unfolding in their lives is different from what they had hoped to achieve. And I try to circumvent by merely helping them diagnose how that unfolded and what might have gone differently had we anteed up a little more effectively in one or more of those values.
I think it's important that you said what they hope to achieve.
Absolutely.
I think a lot of parents now, and Morgan and I talk about this a lot offline, but a lot of parents are so stringent on their kids about what they wanted to have their kids achieve for them. You know, like, we had these high hopes for you. We had these dreams for you. And I think it's important that you highlighted that really you're backing what it is that they want to do for themselves. So as a parent, for the parents, I should say, how do we balance that of like, gosh, I wish they would have made this decision because that's what I would have done, but also accepting that they're different people than you.
They're far different.
They might not even have the same goals as you.
Our boys are vastly different from one another. You know, first child, second child, Compton, our older son, he is a rule follower. I think he's almost scared by potential consequence to engage in risky behavior, which kind of safeguards him, whereas Chatham, our younger son, is a daredevil. He was our ninja warrior. And part of that also is he grew up being the nail. Not that Compton was the hammer, but in order to keep up with Compton's buddies and he was always feeling compelled to do more than the average child his age. So, you know, just the 2 of them alone are different, let alone their differences from Susan and me. What we do is we effort to draw from our experiences and more or less, you know, pro, con, plus, delta, as they are preparing to embark on a situation, if we're able to nip it proactively, to weigh out potential outcomes and to have them assess, you know, like, you go down this path, this is what might occur. None of us can be certain. But also it's granting respect to the fact that, as I said to you moments ago, this world is a lot different from the one in which I grew up. So I don't have even all the answers. So we demonstrate within reason a lot of respect and trust in them. You know, if it's constantly exercising authority from the stance of telling what to do, we believe teach, not tell. So let's dive into it together. Let's crack this open and dig in and have you help assess. And a lot of times they'll do so, and they might not be ecstatic with the end result or what we get from our archaeological expedition, our dig, but they themselves will, I don't really want to mess with that either.
Right.
And so it's guidance. Now, at the end of the day, we're still mom and dad, so this isn't some kind of environment where it's always fluid and make your own choice. But
it's got to still be order.
Exactly. And I truly believe, I think this will come as a shock to many. Neither of our boys has ever been grounded. They don't endure long-term punishments. I can't remember the last time we took something away for an extended period of time. I say none of this to suggest that we have all the answers, but we have strived diligently to create a culture in our home where love is paramount, there is tremendous respect. We honestly operate from those core values that I just shared, and in creating that culture, the boys are indebted, not in the sense they feel like they constantly owe us, but the idea of conjuring disappointment in us or, fragmenting this foundation we've created as a family is so far from what they wish to do that they astound us with the fine and admirable decisions that they make and actions that they take.
Yeah. And I think you're spot on about the showing them. I mean, really, I feel the same way. I don't know that I've ever sat Emerson down and been like, this is what I think you should do and this is how I think you should live your life. I live mine in a way that I hope she respects. And if I have a day where I do something that I feel like I screwed up or I said something or I was short with her, I make sure to come back and be like, hey, that version of me that you saw just then, that was a moment that was a misstep.
Maybe even apologizing to her.
Yes. Apologize and call it as it is. That was wrong and that wasn't your fault. The reason why we're late is actually because I slept through my alarm and then I rushed you out the door. It's not you. It's actually me. And I'm sorry if
assuming ownership. Yes.
And I think a lot of people miss that mark when they're parenting, but so much of it comes down to show them what it looks like to have good character and to be empathetic and to try.
Without question. And I told you, that motto in their approach to sports, hard and fast, fun and free, it's basically a microcosm of you give the task at hand every aspect of you, all you have to give. Mm-hmm. But don't lose sight of the fact that all these things we called sports are, by definition, glorified games for which the primary objective is fun. And I'm not discounting the fact that there's a lot more that can come or be birthed from them than simply enjoyment. But if you are engaging in one of those and you're not having fun doing it, why are we doing it? And so they have learned that there's this balance. My wife was a very accomplished NCAA collegiate field hockey player, played for the national championship, scored the lone goal in the conference championship. I'm proud. I'm proud, hubby. Of course, I have an athletic background. So we have also cultivated this environment where we're blessed that our boys still love learning from and being coached by us because they know that we are going to pour authentic, intentional knowledge, technique into them. But again, as I said, if they uphold those 4 core values when they go out to compete, if you lose, you're not getting browbeaten. Because here's what I tell them, and Laura, this is a difficult concept to convey. I would never encourage anybody to celebrate losing or, I love defeat. But it's a fact of life. And there is only, and there's only one. The word best is an absolute. In any given context, it's one of one. You might very well be the best at something in a particular context. It's kind of like look to the smartest person in the room. There may be rooms in which you are that individual, but then you walk into another and the level of expertise is heightened and it's no longer you. If you uphold those 4 core values You know, my son's going to the wrestling mat. They run on the cross-country course. One's a tennis player, one's a baseball player. And you've applied that best version of yourself. You've upheld all 4 of those core values, and you're beaten. All the more you can say is that person's best was better than yours in that context. Right. And you tip your hat. There's no shoulda, coulda, woulda. Mm-hmm. I was just beaten by someone superior to me in this moment in time in that context. And I remember vividly when my older son was like 7 years old. He was wrestling. It was in a cafeteria because the gym was full with whatever school sports were taking place. And my wife was videoing on her phone, and she leaned into me and she said, "This is a good time to tell you this. We don't know how this is going to go, but just know that the most important thing he sees as soon as this match is over is going to be your face." And he ended up losing that match, like, I don't know, 5-7. And as soon as he looked at me, I smiled as big as I could. And he smiled. And it wasn't like, he's like, "Yay, I lost." But it was like, there was plenty of time to be had during which we could wade through whatever we chose. But in that moment, he hadn't disappointed Dad.
Right.
He hadn't done anything wrong. And I hadn't lost the plot on why we were there. Mm-hmm. He handled himself admirably. He shook the other boy's hand. He shook the coach's hand. He didn't detract from that boy's win by crying or having a tantrum. What mattered had occurred. He had tried his hardest for 3 minutes. The outcome didn't go our way. And again, I digress. I'm not saying I have all the answers. I will go back and fib. I told you that I'm vehemently opposed to sports specialization. There's a few reasons why. One, there's research that demonstrates. Yeah, I know. That demonstrates there's a lot of correlation between that sports specialization and athletically induced injury because the compensatory muscles aren't developed. It's a fast route to burnout because you are exclusively dedicating your attention to one activity. You're not exposed to as many peer groups and in turn friends. You learn from far fewer leadership models. But part of what I love, and this is the reason why I went back on my word, we celebrate Christmas in our home. I love the fact that at the end of one season and as the beginning of the next is approaching, and their interests are waning just a bit from what they might have been at the opening of the season, it's like Christmas Eve in our house. Mm-hmm. So our boys are both wrestlers. We're about to enter baseball and tennis season, and they can't wait to put new grips on their rackets and bats. And so we've had the conversation with them. Could you climb a couple more spots on the podium or be unquantifiably this much better? Maybe. But if that came at the peril of these other activities that you love, and they cut us off, and they're like, "No, I would never want that."
Yeah. Well, and you can do anything, but should you do everything?
Correct. No. And I will say, if you and I were to re-examine in history who we believe the greatest athletes of all time were, we would speak names like Bo Jackson, Deion Sanders. And why was that? Because they were prolific in multiple activities. Yeah. Bo Jackson was a professional football and baseball player, and many would argue that track and field was his best sport. And I guarantee you, if somebody sat down with that man, he would tell you that a lot of reason why he did that wasn't because he had to be the best at everything. It's because of the joy he felt in doing so. And that does all connect to the moderation with which we live our lives as family members in our house.
Yeah.
And it keeps it fresh, keeps it fun.
I totally agree. I am with you in that same parenting journey. And it's funny because I had a similar experience with Emmy the other day, but she does. It's not like I've ever been like, you disappointed me out there, but for whatever reason, they do look to you.
Absolutely.
To gauge how did that go. And she'll look over after every play in basketball, after every, attempted goal that she may miss in lacrosse. She'll look over at me, and you smile because I don't mind.
No.
You lost the goal. Like, did you have fun? And we always go back to that conversation where, it's how do you think that you did? I don't want to dictate what you felt was good or bad or could have done better. So if it was, well, I think I gave it 80%, then the follow-up question is like, what could you have done with the other 20? Like,
yes.
talk through what that looks like. Or, she'll come away having won and she gets a little bit arrogant. And I'm like, now hold on. Because there's going to be a day that comes where you didn't win.
You didn't win.
And you need to be thoughtful about the people that are on the other side, that you're in their face and, I was the best out there. You be careful with that.
Yes.
But it's always led by her. It's like, what do you think you could have done? How
Correct.
do you think it went? And then the conversations of support come in after that. Let them guide, what
yes.
you want to do.
The experience is theirs.
Yeah.
My dad, 97 years young, he has often said undefeated equals untested. So, the first time they suffer a defeat, again, I don't celebrate it, but it's a beautiful thing, per my faith, with great intention, that just reminds them, it grounds them. And so I revel in all that. And I don't want to be misunderstood. It's not that our household is, willy-nilly and we don't care if you ever win.
Hippies.
But exactly, right? Like that's us, right? We're just
whatever, man.
Hugging trees. Not that there's anything wrong with that. But we, again, believe that by instilling those 4 values, if our boys are upholding them, they are putting themselves in the best position to present that culminating best version of themselves to whatever task it is that they're attacking. And that puts you in the best position to be victorious.
You're a wealth of knowledge. We could probably talk for 87 hours, and I would.
87 is a fair assessment.
I think the audience would love it. But hopefully everyone got a taste of your coaching style too here today. But if somebody is looking to contact you, if they're interested in Shaping of the Mantis and reading your book, or they're interested in working with you to better themselves, how do they get in contact with you? And what are you who's the ideal client?
I appreciate
there is no
your
ideal client.
No, I don't. Yeah, I don't want to give you the corny cliche, but you and I would both say that the best route to touch base with me is my website. That's www.MantiSpeck.com. There are links to email there, links to purchase both this book, and there's a children's book that I published. There's a very comprehensive overview of all the services that we provide. In terms of client base, I will always welcome a conversation before shying from one. As my website shares, it doesn't matter if you're looking for a keynote speaker on cultural enhancement, a sports-specific or general wellness athletic trainer, whether you would like educational coaching or leadership development. I feel competent to serve others, and I use that word intentionally. And I would far rather have that conversation, that Zoom call, to meet those people exactly where they are, find out their wants and needs, and see if there is a seam through which I can enter and walk shoulder to shoulder in assisting them, supporting them in creating and enhancing the best versions of themselves.
Love it.
Thank
I love
you.
it. And I think that the work that you do is amazing. Anyone
Likewise.
who is coached by Stephen is in good hands.
Appreciate you.
2 more things that we do on the podcast, just for our listeners, but every time that we have a guest, we have a quote behind me that I think resonates not only with the lesson that we're talking about, but just the person that's coming in. But the quote today is, "Run into the unknown, you can walk once you get there." And I feel like,
Wow.
Are you and I not the pioneers
We
of
are.
doing that?
We are. That might be the only running I'm a fan of. And another reason why I dislike running is because it was corollary with weight maintenance and conditioning. So people who find
do it with a
you love it.
bag.
No,
Don't
but
do
you
that.
and I never did that. But
No.
you do it with passion. And this, I mean, it's hard for me to grant myself the compliment of being a pioneer, but that's what we've done.
Well, I think it's just having faith, too, in what is next. You might not have a great full picture of what next is, but you have time to rest once you get there, and you have time to figure it out once you get there. All you need to know is that you're done with this last thing and have faith in the fact that the next one is going to feel more aligned.
I'm
So
smiling because I couldn't like this more. And I'll tell you, I talk about it in the book. For me, my faith, the definition of faith is where hope and belief intersect. Mm-hmm. And so that quote is living evidence of that, right? What we hope, what we believe. Faith is the ultimate intangible, but we ran in head first, girlie. We did. You did. You crushed it. I might have, before I walked, I might have peered around the corner. I might have gotten down on my knees and crawled a little bit, but it's so true.
The other thing that we do is we have our podcast guests talk about a song that resonates with them. It's like the walkout song. Like if we're going to intro you, and we talked about it beforehand, but it's Brandon Lake's Count 'Em, and I am a big fan of Brandon Lake.
Yes.
So Count 'Em is Steven's song, and for all the listeners, our gift back to you and also our gift to the podcast guests is that we've created a shared playlist with all of the songs that we compile from all of our guests. So we'll be adding that one to the list today.
I am honored.
Steven, it was a pleasure as always.
I can't thank you enough.
And to have you, and if anyone is looking to get in contact with Steven, I'm happy to point you his way too. But you've been listening to The Grit Files. I'm your host, Laura Reynolds, with Purpose and Grit. Steven.
Thanks for having me.
You're welcome.